Hello and welcome to the Backyard Art School. My name is Julia and welcome to our first week of Term 2 art classes. So this week we've had all of our students choose and select the animals that they'd like to create an artwork of. And we had the younger students where they voted for one animal, and then with that one animal that they've chosen, they're going to be creating a lovely group artwork, which is going to be a large artwork with each of their prints of the animals that they've selected being included into that major work. They also get to create their own individual artwork as well that is then framed and taken home. Once they've learned how to sketch and draw their chosen animal, we then work on concepts of how they're going to include this animal into their natural environment and what is the story they're going to say with the artwork that they're going to create as their major artwork. So term 2 is a lot more focused on composition, what the children are trying to present in their artwork, and working on different ideas and concepts. So with developing these artworks, the first lesson for our older students is that they will be given photographs of the animal, and usually I get photos from either creating prints from photos from the internet, or I also get lovely photos from books. And I found that the best place to find books as references is in St. Vinny's or op shops. You'll find that these sort of books, they will sell for like $2 or something like that, and they're really great. Like, yeah, I've got some David Attenborough books as well. I've got a book on the Great Barrier Reef, books on the eucalyptus forests, and so forth. So I've got a whole lot of reference photos that the children can delve into for their landscape component of their artwork. I usually get the children to look at the photos of the animals that they have chosen, the reference photos, but for them to develop from that photograph their own unique composition and their own unique artwork, as well as having some sort of story behind what they're trying to present with that artwork. So I'm just going to draw over with a Sharpie so you can see what I drew with pencils in yesterday's class for the older students. So we looked at the sea turtle, and what I get the students to do is they get a nice big piece of butcher's paper, and with that they sketch their ideas, and I get them to draw with a ruler postcard size format, which is similar to the lino print. And I usually get them to do 2 landscape versions and then 2 portrait versions of their composition. And I talk through 3 variations of compositions that they can focus on to create something that is quite interesting. And I also go through, when they're doing landscape, also talk about having something in the foreground, in the middle ground, and then also in the background. So those are also ideas, concepts that I talk to them about when developing their composition. I had an example of a sea turtle, and the student, she had a reference photo that was from So the student had some reference photos of the sea turtle, and then I also have a really lovely book of the Great Barrier Reef, and in that book she was able to look at some photographs of the sea turtle in nature, and she was able to see and read about some information about the sea turtle. So you got some sea turtle there laying some eggs on the beach, and then from that we talked about composition, so how to compose this artwork and to make it unique to themselves, and also to tell a story about what they would like to reflect on with their final artwork. So I went through compositions, and I just go through the simple basic composition. There's so many different variants of what you can create as far as a strong composition in an artwork. And I just go for the really simple ones, such as the triangular composition, where you have shapes that go in a triangular format. So for instance, the triangular composition that we have here is, you could have the sea turtle. So you've got the sea turtle's body, and you'll notice that I just go very quickly with the sketches, but you've got the flippers going downwards. Okay, and I'm just doing a really quick sketch example of the sea turtle, this face, and I'm just going over the drawings that I did yesterday for them just as an example. So you've got the sea turtle, you have a triangular composition here, because you can see the flippers are going up, and you can see the focal point of the sea turtle itself there. And then you have perhaps the sea turtle being under the sea, and you could also have the sea turtle with a bit of the landscape in the background, and that landscape could be of any areas. It could be Sydney Harbour. We sometimes do get green sea turtles that come down to Sydney Harbour, or you could have it where it's actually at the Great Barrier Reef. Or you could have it, with either coral underneath, if it's the Great Barrier Reef, and you could also have the coral which is bleached, which is an issue in the Great Barrier Reef, coral bleaching where it's dying and so forth. So that could be something that could be presented in the artwork. Or it could be another thing that kills or threatens turtles is that they eat jellyfish, and you could have maybe a floating plastic bag in the water with the artwork, which presents the issues of plastic pollution that is killing the green sea turtle. So these are different things, different concepts that I talk through with one idea of how, as an artist, you are also telling a visual story. And also having a composition which is quite strong, quite powerful, and eye-catching. Another type of composition focus is one where you work within the rectangle and you have the objects within the space going from one corner to the other corner. For example, you could have a side view of the sea turtle, and it could be underwater, okay, but you can see the shell and so forth. Again, it could be presented in that way. So you've got the eye of the viewer looking with this composition starting from the foreground, perhaps having something in the foreground that could be a focal point. Then you have the actual sea turtle, the body shape, which is then going towards its head, looking up, and the sea turtle could be looking for something, going to bite something like a plastic bag or a jellyfish, and then underneath you could either have some seaweed or kelp or some crayweed that it could be eating on, so it could show what a beautiful environment the green sea turtle is living in. And that could be the story of this lovely environment for the sea turtle, and this is the environment that we should really nurture and try and protect for the sea turtle. So it could be a more positive story behind that. because when we are doing our term time classes, the reason why we sort of think about a story at the very beginning of creating the artwork is that this is also a time where there's an opportunity for those children to enter their artworks into art competitions. And when they do that, they are also needing to have their artwork. When they submit the artworks, they also need to have an artist statement. So it's a really good starting point for them to understand that when they have an idea of a major work and when they're working on it, they really do need to be thinking about what is it they're trying to present in the artwork, and then also have some sort of idea of what sort of statement as an artist they're trying to present with that particular species of animal that they're presenting, what they want to talk about, what their ideas are, why they've chosen that animal, and so forth. So this is just ways that I get the children to think about things before they create an artwork, where they can sort of talk about what they're trying to present in their artwork visually, and then also having it being having an artist statement as well, which will also be presented and could also go into a exhibition as well. So that's another concept, and also looking at this type of composition, whereas from one corner to the other, it could go also the other way as well. And these are two landscape formats, but I also look at the portrait format, and also I also talk about it's really kind of important. It is important to have something in the foreground, especially when you're doing landscape. It's really important to have an object of focus in the foreground, then to have perhaps the animal or creature in the midground, and then even to have something in the background, which can be sort of subtle, either talking about location, whereabouts they could be with the landscape. If it was not the Great Barrier Reef with the islands, they could have the harbour bridge in the background. So these are sort of ideas that I get the students to include and think about when they're doing creating their design for their major work. Now we're going to the portrait format for their composition. And with that, I looked at the focus of perhaps a circular composition. So with that, they could have perhaps the coral reef. This is just examples. These are things where I just show them that the possibilities. So they could have perhaps a coral reef that is in a circular format, framing their artwork. So you've got coral reef, fish swimming around, perhaps some coral at the bottom. You could have that idea of the coral being bleached and dying, like in the Great Barrier Reef, by having the coral bleach, or it could be something which is a beautiful lush coral or crayweed, which is some of the natural food, or you could have jellyfish, or you could have coral which is bleached and maybe some plastic pollution, and then to have the focal point in the middle of the circular frame of the turtle itself. So that is another idea of a composition that can work, and it's quite strong. It gives a nice circular focus right into the center of that. And then again, you could have maybe a landscape focus. You've got some of these diagonal lines going across, and with those diagonal lines, you could have the same turtle posture, but this time it is as the other one that was under the sea. This time it could be sitting on the sand, and you could have the green turtle with perhaps their clutch of eggs that have just been laid, and the turtle is there just looking over the eggs. It's got the perhaps maybe water in the background, the sea, and that could be another thing. Or you could have birds. So one of the threats of the eggs is that the seabirds, like seagulls, they'll actually eat the babies once they're hatched. So it could be the turtle gets threatened by the birds eating their babies when they hatch. We could talk about those issues of climate change affecting the male to female ratio of the sea turtles. So these are all the ideas and concepts that I talk through with the students and then with their individual animals that they've chosen. And then from that, they can create a strong composition. So going back to this artwork, which is again a landscape, and you have the Major Mitchell cockatoo in the foreground. Then you have in the middle ground, you know, the housing, boat. And then in the background, it shows Sydney Harbour with a harbour bridge. So these are just different ideas. Once they've created and they've got an idea, they then start to refine their drawing and their design to create it as a print. So they need to be really clear with that. And that's for next week's class, where they'll actually start to draw their design, but there's no shading involved. The print, when they're doing the design for the print, there is no grey areas. It has to either be black and white, so they get a bit more graphic with their final drawing. And that's how I start off our classes for the first week. And for the younger students, we work as a group. So these ideas, I will help them with talking through different ideas, but as a group work, we're going to have like 8 animals involved. I will usually draw a few ideas and then they'll choose which one they like, and then they all work together as a team to develop that concept that they've chosen of how to create a final major work. And then for their individual work, they can then decide how they would like to create that, keeping in mind the basic compositions that I've been teaching them how to do for their design, for their final design. So that is the idea of the first class. It's a lot of information that I show them, but I keep on repeating the same concepts throughout the whole designing process, and the importance of having a strong composition, thinking about a story behind their idea of why they're choosing this animal and what they would like to focus on through their artwork, because at the end of the day, sometimes they do need to be writing and thinking of writing an artist statement, and it's really good to have a clear idea of what you're trying to say at the very beginning of creating an artwork, rather than trying to fit it around at the end. So that's what I teach. I hope you enjoy this video, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what the students do create in my class. As I said, this lesson is actually on our online classes as memberships, so you'll actually be able to go through the process of drawing the koala, and the older students are given options of different landscapes that they can choose, and I'll give them also ideas of what they can create, and they can also create their own composition as well. So it's just a way for them to understand the steps to create a powerful, thought-provoking artwork that is focused on a native animal that is threatened in Australia. This is a wonderful way of teaching students how they can really show powerful imagery through their artworks and raising awareness of the threatened species that are in Australia. I will leave the membership link below if you're interested. You'll have all of the classes online for you as a member for only $38. And with that, if you do subscribe, you can always unsubscribe if you're finding that you're not able to continue with that membership. I really do hope that you enjoy these videos, and I look forward to seeing you next week.